Hello, everybody. A very warm good evening to everyone. I welcome you all to this second episode of Sources of Medieval Indian History. This series aims to present before you primary sources written by chroniclers, travelers, theologians, court officials, members of the nobility, royal family, or even the merchants who have left written records that are of great importance to the students of history and to people who are interested about history and past societies in general. The obvious question to ask would be, why are these sources important for common people? Here is a brief answer to that. In these polarized times that we live in, when WhatsApp universities have the say, there is a room for misinterpretation, there is a room for misunderstanding, and it is important to know what the sources actually say. And that is something that Aligarh School of Thought, Aligarh School of Historians have always stood by. We go to the sources, we look what the sources say, and then we say something, and then we form an argument. So, on this happy occasion of Choti Diwali, in this festive weekend, I wish to bring to your notice that ASHA and Ganga Jamuni stand for new beginnings. We are a beginning of togetherness. We are a beginning of darkness towards light, because we are using knowledge to dispel misinterpretations, to dispel myths, and we bring to you programs, we bring to you topics and discussions which dispel the darkness. So today we have with us Professor Syed Ali Nadeem Rezavi of Aligarh Muslim University, who is going to talk about Kitab-ul-Hind and Nuh Sipihr. They are two very important sources, both of the Sultanate period. And in the beginning, as this is the second lecture in this series, we are starting with Sultanate period sources, and gradually we will move on to the Mughal period sources and later Mughal period sources ahead. Before inviting Professor Rezavi to the platform, I would just like to give here a brief introduction of what his academic achievements are. Professor Rezavi was a Charles Wallace Fellow, 2007, at SOAS London, and he was the visiting fellow Maison des Sciences de l'Homme, Paris, in 2008. Till recently, he was also the chairman and coordinator of the Center of Advanced Studies in History. His PhD is on the theme of urban middle classes in Mughal India, and he has worked, and his research interests focus on history and archaeology of medieval India, and focuses primarily on the Mughal dynasty. He is author of a book entitled Fatehpur Sikri Revisited, which was published by Oxford University Press in 2013. He has also contributed a number of chapters. He has also edited a book by the title of History to Archaeology, which came out in 2019. He has contributed chapters to books including Religious Movements and Institutions in Medieval India, which came out in 2019, published by Oxford. And there are many more publications to his credit. He has authored more than 50 papers, which are published in various reputed journals. He was the president of the Medieval Indian section of the Indian History Congress during 2013-14 session, General President UP History Congress 2018, Sectional President Bengal Itihas Samsad 2019, and Punjab Historical Conference 2017. Professor Rezavi is also a fellow of the Shia Institute since September 2013. In 2018, he formed a group by the name Aligarh Society of History and Archaeology, ASHA for short. This group was dedicated and is dedicated to secular and scientific projection of our past. And this particular program is something that is a step towards realization of that that aim with which ASHA was formed. So with this, I would like to welcome Professor Rezavi to the platform, and I'll hand over the stage to you, sir.
Uh, Thank you for a very generous introduction. In fact, uh, thank you, Lubna. Uh, Thank you, Ganga Jamuni, uh, for giving me this opportunity to speak on a very important aspect as far as the sources of medieval Indian history are concerned. But before I start speaking on the topic, let me wish all of you a very happy Diwali. In fact, today is the Choti Diwali, the festival of light, a festival which banishes darkness. And that is one of the aims of ASHA, our group, to banish the darkness and bring in knowledge. And this is the endeavor which we are trying to do before you. We started our lecture series in October with reflections on our shared past, and then slowly we started the second series on the sources for the study of medieval India. Last Friday, Professor Syed Jabir Raza introduced us to the Rezavi sources, which are needed to study the history of India. Today, I will try to deal with two early texts, one written during early 11th century in Arabic and the other during the 14th century in Persian. One is written by a scientist, Abu Rehan al-Beruni, who came to India along with Sultan Mahmud of Ghazni. The other by a poet, mystic, and noble, Hazrat Amir Khusro, who very proudly suffixes his name with the term Dehlavi. One text is actually in the form of observations by a foreign visitor who accompanied a mercenary invader, but who was himself a very keen and dispassionate observer with a scientific temper, who not only recorded what he found here as it is, but also compared it with other contemporary civilizations. The other is written by a person born in India who not only served the sultans but was also very proud of the fact that his country was India. One of the texts introduced the Indian civilization to the world. The other provides us the first glimpse of India as a geographical entity and a subcontinent from the perspective of a proud Indian. The first work is popularly known as Al-Beruni's India, a name given to it by a translator. It was originally known as Tahqiq Ma'al-Hind, or simply Kitab-ul-Hind. It was finished around 1030 AD. The other work which we are taking up today is a Masnavi of Amir Khusro, known as Nuh Sipihr, which was written in 1318. Both the texts give substantial information about India and provide us crucial information regarding the interactions of the two cultural traditions, namely Hinduism, or whatever you call it, and Islam. The second text, in fact, provides us for the first time, as Professor Irfan Habib says, the idea of India as a geographical entity. My job, as far as Al-Beruni is concerned, has been rendered easy by the lecture delivered by Professor Jabir Raza last week. He dealt with some detail with the Tahqiq-ul-Hind and what kind of information it provides us. So I will not go into that much time and detail as I would devote on Amir Khusro and his Nuh Sipihr. Let me also inform you that I have papers written on them from which you may get further details. Very recently, an edited work entitled Alternative Arguments, Essays in Honor of Surendra Gopal, which have been edited by Professor Ejaz Hussain and Dr. Sanjay Garg, has been published by Primus, where my paper, One Civilization Looks at Another, has been published. My other paper, The Idea of India in Amir Khusro, was included in India, Studies in the History of an Idea, which was edited by Irfan Habib way back in 2004. Let us start with Tahqiq-ul-Hind of Abu Rehan al-Beruni and see what information it gives us about India and its society and culture. It is a work spread over 80 chapters and dealing with subjects like religion and philosophy, festivals and festivities, astronomy and alchemy, social life and manners, weights and measures, science and metrology, customs and laws, among other things. It is significant to note that in his attempt to look at the Indian civilization, al-Beruni wastes no time on what he calls bizarre and fantastic, which has been the hallmark of the foreign perception of the Indian civilization and culture. Ainslie Embry, a very well-known scholar, in his Imaging India, published in 1989, remarks that contrarily, and I quote him, a concern with the strange and fantastic in another civilization is intended as a device to avoid coming to terms with it, to avoid giving rational explanations for human and social differences, unquote. Al-Beruni does not invoke this device. He regards Hindus, the Indians, we may translate it as Indians. Remember what Richard Eaton told us the other day? Indian sources mention the invaders as Turushkas. They are not mentioned by their religion as Muslims, as today we do. So Al-Beruni regards Hindus, that is Indians, as excellent philosophers and felt strong inclination towards Hindu philosophy. Yet, being a Muslim, and thus at times, he does not fail to point out the superiority of Islam over Brahmanic India. He actually attacks Arabs, but never Islam. In his Tahqiq-ul-Hind, he explored nearly every aspect of Indian life, including religion, history, geography, geology, science, and mathematics. During his journey through India, military and political histories were not of al-Beruni's main focus. Instead, he decided to document the more civilian and scholarly areas of Indian life, such as culture, science, and religion. Doubts are sometimes raised about the concept of India as a nation prior to the British occupation, and al-Beruni provides a definite information on this issue. He mentions various parts of India as different states and regions, but is categorical about the boundaries of the country of India. He informs that the mountain Kularjak near Kashmir and the mountains Unang, from where the river Sindh originates, at that time the region was under the Turks when he was writing, form the northern frontier of India. This may refer to the Karakoram range in the Himalayas and areas to its east. In the western frontier mountains of India, there lived various tribes of Afghans and extended up to the neighborhood of the Sindh Valley. This would mean the area on the Afghanistan-Pakistan border on the upper side and the area up to Sistan on the lower side as the western frontiers of India. He further informs that the southern border of India is formed by the ocean and the coast of India begins with Tees, the capital of Makran. He does not specify the eastern frontier of India, but elsewhere he mentions Ganga Pragyotish and Lohita, that is Bengal, Assam, and Arunachal Pradesh, respectively, as parts of India. While talking about Sarandeep, that is Ceylon, he also mentions Rameshwaram and Setubandh. For the latter, he mentions that it is the dike of Ram, the son of Dashrath, which he built from the continent to the castle of Lanka. Al-Beruni also informs that in former times, Khorasan, Persia, Iraq, Mosul, and the country up to the frontiers of Syria was Buddhist. But then Zarathustra went forth from Azerbaijan and preached Magism in Balkh, that is Bactria. In consequence, the Buddhists were banished from those countries and had to emigrate to the countries east of Balkh. About the belief of the Indians in God, Al-Beruni informs that the belief of educated and uneducated people differs in every nation. For the former strive to conceive abstract ideas and to define general principles, whilst the latter do not pass beyond the apprehension of senses and are content with derived rules. The Brahmins believe with regard to God that he is one, eternal, without beginning and end, acting by free will, almighty, all-wise, living, giving life, ruling, preserving, one who in his sovereignty is unique, beyond all likeness and unlikeness. Some of their scholars call God a point, meaning to say thereby that the qualities of bodies do not apply to him. Al-Beruni criticizes the uneducated man who read this and imagines God to be as small as a point. As far as Indian society is concerned, he gives detailed observation on the contemporary caste system. Al-Beruni again gives much insight on this theme. Socially, he describes the rituals as prescribed in the Dharma Shastras, and while he criticizes the rigors of the ritual, he also points out that such inequalities are shared by other cultures as well. It is arguable, though, that his views are influenced by his being a Sanskritist, that is based on the textual sources rather than the ground realities. He describes the traditional division of the Indian society along the four Varnas and the Antyaja, who are not reckoned in any caste but only as members of a certain craft or profession. The Antyajas, according to Al-Beruni, were divided into 8 classes. For example, fuller, shoemaker, juggler, the basket and shield maker, the sailor, the fisherman, the hunter of wild animals and birds, and the weaver. And all these divisions were according to their professions, that is guilds, and they were free to intermarry with each other, except with fuller, shoemaker, and the weaver. The Antyajas, however, according to him, lived near the villages and towns of the 4 castes, but outside them. He further mentions Hardy, Dome, Kandela, and others who were outside the pale of caste and guilds and were occupied with dirty work like cleansing of villages and other services, and were taken to be illegitimate descendants of a Shudra father and a Brahman mother. On the eating customs of the 4 castes, he observed that when eating together, they form a group of their own caste, one group not comprising a member of another caste. Each person must have his own food for himself, and it is not allowed to eat the remains of the food. They don't share food from the same plate, and that which remains in the plate becomes after the first eater has taken part of it as the remains of the meal, which he calls. Al-Beruni also mentions the dresses worn by the Indians. He mentions the turbans, the trousers. He says that those who want little dress are content to dress in a rag of 2 fingers breadth, which they bind on their loins with 2 cords. But those who like much dress wear trousers lined with as much cotton as would suffice to make a number of counterpanes and saddle rugs. These trousers have no visible openings, and they are so huge that the feet are not visible. The string by which the trousers are fastened is at the back. Their sidar, a piece of dress covering the head and the upper part of the breast and neck, is similar to the trousers being fastened at the back of the button. Thus we see that Al-Beruni's account of India, although marred by ideological impulse from Islamic understanding of religious truth, moves towards an attempt to understand the cultural differences. Everything which had been written so far on Indian civilization was second-hand, a farrago of materials never sifted by the sieve of critical examination. He writes, "No one will deny that in questions of historic authenticity, hearsay does not equal eyewitness." Al-Beruni made an attempt, which was the first of its kind. He found many things which were simply abominable in Indian society and culture, but then, as he himself rationalized, and I quote him, "But similar errors also occur in other religions. Even in Islam, we must decidedly disapprove of anthropomorphic doctrines." Al-Beruni, in undertaking the study of Indian civilization and culture, was also conscious of the difficulties created by the raids of Sultan Mahmud of Ghazna, which he mentions and criticizes. He says that Subuktigin, choosing the holy war as his calling, called himself a Ghazi, built those roads on Indian frontier which his son Sultan Yaminud-Dawla Mahmud, during a period of 30 years, used to utterly ruin, what he says, the prosperity of the country, and performed those wonderful exploits by which the Hindus became like atoms of dust scattered in all directions and like a tale of old in the mouth of the people. He tried to study Sanskrit and interacted with the Brahmins, whom he mentions as his instructors and teachers. One of the facets of Indian culture which he found quite striking was their insularity, which he labels as their, what he says, national character. And I give you, a very important passage from his book. I quote, "We can only say folly is an illness for which there is no medicine. And the Hindus believe that there is no country but theirs, no nation like theirs, no king like theirs, no religion like theirs, no science like theirs. They are haughty, foolishly vain, self-conceited, and stolid. They are by nature niggardly in communicating that which they know, and they take the greatest possible care to withhold it from men of another caste among their own people, still much more, of course, from any foreigner. According to their belief, there is no other country on earth but theirs, no other race of man but theirs, and no created beings besides them have any knowledge or science whatsoever. Their haughtiness is such that if you tell them of any science or a scholar in Khorasan and Persia, they will think you to be both ignoramus and a liar. If they traveled," and it's important, just mark this statement of Al-Beruni, "if they traveled and mixed with other nations, they would soon change their mind, for their ancestors were not as narrow-minded as the present generation is. Many customs of the Hindus," he observed, "differ from the Muslims to such a degree as to appear to us simply monstrous. Hindu customs not only do not resemble to Muslim customs, but are the very reverse, and if ever a custom of theirs resembles one of the Muslims, it has certainly the opposite meaning." What are these customs of Hindus that he observed, that he thought were opposite of theirs? And I again quote him. The Hindus eat singly, one by one, on a tablecloth of dung. They do not make use of the remainder of a meal, and the plates from which they have eaten are thrown away if they are earthen. Then he says, they have red teeth in consequence of chewing areca nut with betel leaves and chalk. Another quotation from him, the men wear articles of female dress. They use cosmetics, wear earrings, arm rings, gold seal rings on the ring finger as well as on the toes of the feet. They ride without a saddle, but if they put on a saddle, they mount the horse from its right side. In traveling, they like to have somebody riding behind them. They fasten the kutar, that is katar, the dagger, at the waist on the right side. They wear a girdle called a yagnopavita, passing from the left shoulder to the right side of the waist. There are many such quotations. Another one which I would like to give you is, they consider as unclean the weaver, but as clean the cupper and the flayer, who kills dying animals for money either by drowning or by burning. They use, it is important, they use black tablets for the children in the schools and write upon them along the long side, not the broad side, writing with a white material from the left to the right. They write the title of a book at the end of it, not at the beginning. Al-Beruni could study Indian sciences at the highest level possible because of his capacity as a polymath and his knowledge of Hellenistic and Arab influences. He seemed to be aware of the Greek masters like Plato, Aristotle, Galenus, Ptolemy, and others. He was affluent in other streams of thought, as we find him drawing analogies from Zoroastrian, Christian, Jewish, Manichaean, and Sufic sources. Al-Beruni mastered the Indian language and appears to have gained a first-hand knowledge of the Indian sciences, as I told you before also. And I quote, at first, I stood to their astronomers in the relation of a pupil to his master, being a stranger among them and not acquainted with their peculiar national and traditional methods of science. On having made some progress, I began to show them the elements on which this science rests, to point out to them some rules of logical deduction and the scientific methods of all mathematics, and then they flocked together round me from all parts, wondering and most eager to learn from me, unquote. Among his Indian sources, we find that he was aware of and used Sankhya of Kapila, Patanjali, Bhagavad Gita, and Puranic literature like Vishnu Dharma Puran, Vishnu Puran, Matsya Puran, Vayu Puran, and Aditya Puran. He also made an in-depth study of such scientific works like Puli Siddhant, Brahma Siddhant, Khandaka Dayaka, Uttara Khandaka Dayaka of Brahma Gupta, Brihat Samhita, Charaka, etc. etc. Al-Beruni appears to appreciate the Indians for their knowledge of sciences. For example, at one place he explains, and I quote him, the Greeks, though impure, must be honored, since they were trained in sciences and therein excelled others. But then, what are we to say about a Brahman if he combines with his purity the height of science? One of the specific aspects of Hindu life that Al-Beruni studied was the Hindu calendar, the Indian calendar. His scholarship on the topic exhibited great determination and focus, not to mention the excellence in his approach of the in-depth research he performed. He developed a method of converting the dates of Hindu calendar to the dates of 3 different calendars that were common in the Islamic countries of his time period, the Greek, the Arab Muslim, and the Persian. Al-Beruni also employed astronomy in the determination of his theories, which were complex mathematical equations and scientific calculation that allows one to convert dates and years between the different calendars. He also translated the works of Indian sage Patanjali with the title Tarjumat Kitab-ul-Patanjali. The dispassionate account of Hinduism given by Al-Beruni was remarkable for its time. He stated that he was fully objective in his writings, remained unbiased like a proper historian should. Al-Beruni documented everything about India just as it happened. But he did note how some of the accounts of information that he was given by natives of the land may not have been reliable in terms of complete accuracy. However, he did try to be as honest as possible in his writing. Dr. Sakhav compares his work as, and I quote Sakhav, a magic island of quiet, impartial research in the midst of a world of clashing swords, burning towns, and plundered temples, unquote. Now, with this brief account of what is given in Kitab-ul-Hind, let me pass on to Amir Khusro and his Nuh Sipihr. The idea of India as a nation is a comparatively recent development and appears to be not older than the age of Gautam Buddha, that is around circa 500 BC. When we hear of the 16 Mahajanpadas, which together comprise North India and parts of Afghanistan. Ultimately, it was with Ashokan inscriptions found all over India, datable to circa 250 BC, that one first encounters India's early names. Jambu Deepa, the Pali form of Jambu Dweep, used in rock edict first of Ashok, used in the sense of the country as a whole. The cultural distinction reinforcing a territorial idea of a nation is also found from the time of Ashok, when in Rock Edict 13, one hears of the Greeks, Yonas, being different as, I quote, they had no shamanas, that is Buddhist priests, and brahmanas amongst them. The idea of an independent nation was further crystallized with the Turkish contact when the term Hind came to be applied for not only a geographical territory but also to the people inhabiting this territory. The writing of Abu Rehan al-Beruni's Kitab-ul-Hind, which we discussed earlier, further consolidated the view of India being a distinct cultural entity. The terms Hindu, the plural of which is Hinduan, Hindi, and Hindustani, came to be applied to the inhabitants of this geographical territory, whether they were Hindus in the religious sense of the term or Muslim. It appears that by 13th century, along with this common nomenclature and the concept of a distinct geographical unity, came an understanding of a common heritage and a composite culture. The most prominent examples of this emerging, what I can say, nationalism, common heritage, and composite culture appear in the writings of Amir Khusro Dehlavi, the poet laureate of Delhi Sultanate. Amir Khusro was an Indian Muslim who was born at Patiali, situated in the modern district of Etah in Uttar Pradesh. He was born in 1253 AD. His father, Amir Saifuddin Mahmud, had migrated to India during the reign of Iltutmish, some years prior to Khusro's birth, from the city of Kush. Now that city is known as Shahr-e-Sabz, which is in Uzbekistan. His mother was the daughter of Imadul Mulk, a noble of Delhi. Khusro was a prolific writer and has left behind important works like Qiran-ul-Sadain, Miftahul Futuh, Shiri wa Khusro, Hasht Bihisht, Masnavi Deval Rani wa Khizr Khan, Matlaul Anwar, Ejaz-e Khusravi, Khazainul Futuh, and of course, this particular work which we are analyzing, the Nuh Sipihr. Although in almost all these works, Khusro has left behind statements which help us understand his vision and concept of India as a nation, the Nuh Sipihr appears to be the most patriotic of them all. The Nuh Sipihr is a Masnavi which was completed by Khusro, as I said, in 1318 AD, and eulogizes the reign of Mubarak Shah Khalji and appears to reflect most perfectly the ideas of Khusro about India, which he tried to develop in his earlier works. This work is divided into 9 chapters, which correspond to the 9 skies, Sipihr, that is, the heavens. It is generally in the 3rd chapter of this work that we find most of the references to his concept and praises for his country, India. It is here that Amir Khusro proudly asserts, and I quote him, "If my adversary taunts me as to why do I give tarjee to Hind over other nations, I would say there are 2 reasons for this hujjat, assertion. The first reason is that this land since time immemorial has been destined to be the place of my birth, Maulud, abode, Mawa, and motherland, Watan." So one of the first things he says about India, that it's a good place because it is my homeland. He further justifies the praise and precedence which his motherland enjoys by citing a well-known tradition of the Prophet. The love of motherland is an essential part of true faith. Hubbul Watan minal Iman. He asserts that this is an essential part of his deen, his creed. In the introductory section of this chapter, chapter 3, Khusro clarifies that the praise of India was reserved in this section because the presiding planet of both the 7th sky, to which this chapter corresponds, and India was Zuhul, Saturn. He mentions in his section that although Rum, Khorasan, and Khotan are alleged, that is, Tana log dete hain, they are superior of their superiority, he had knowledge of the efficacy of this country's magic and thus proved that Hind is better than any other country. He writes, and I quote him, "If the Creator bestows upon me the gift so that my easy flowing pen may be empowered to express qualities to perfection, I aspire not to leave the greatness of this land on earth concealed, but raise it to the sky up to the height of heaven, Khuld Bari." Khusro then goes on to enumerate 7 rational evidences, Aqli Dalil, Asbat, which go to prove the assertion that India was the paradise. The first argument which he puts forward, and please, pay attention. The first argument which he put forward is that after being thrown out of heaven, Adam found repose, panah, in this country. According to him, as Hind was just like heaven, Khuld Nishan, Adam could descend here and find repose. Secondly, India was the land of the peacock, which was a heavenly bird. He writes, had paradise, that is Firdaus, been in some other country, this bird would have gone thither. The third evidence of Khusro regarding India being heaven was that the serpent, which was a companion of the peacock in the heaven, also accompanied it to this land. But as this land was known for its good and beneficial deeds, while the serpent had the vice of biting, it was allotted place below the earth and not above it. Khusro puts forward 4 other arguments, which include the moderate climate of India as compared with the severe climatic conditions of his Central Asian homeland, and the tradition of the Prophet that the faithful would receive their reward not in this world but in the heaven, while the unbelievers would enjoy here itself. He writes, Hind was a paradise for the unbelievers since the advent of Adam till the coming of Islam. Even in recent times, these infidels have every pleasure of heaven like wine and honey. After establishing that India was the heaven on earth, Khusro goes on to discuss the reasons of his preference of Hind over Rum, Iraq, Khorasan, and Kandahar, and discusses the ideal climate of his country, its flowers and fruits. Discussing the moderate Indian climate, Khusro remarks, and I again quote him, they, that is Khorasanians, are deafened by the excessive cold and do not listen to the arguments of India being heaven, and instead accuse it of possessing an extremely hot climate. In reply to this, I cite again what the Prophet had said, the hot weather is troublesome, and that is all, but everyone is killed through cold weather. Further praising the Indian weather, Khusro says that it is so moderate that a poor peasant, Deccan, spends the night in the pasture land grazing his flock with only a single worn out cloak wrapped around him. A Brahman can take his bath in the cold waters of the river early in the morning, while a mere branch of a tree is enough to shade the poor of the country. There is a spring, Bahar, all year round in India, and thus an abundance of greenery and beautiful fragrant flowers which do not lose their fragrance even after they wilt. Among the juicy fruits of India, Khusro mentions mangoes, bananas, which are extremely soft, and sugarcane, cardamom, camphor, cloves are also mentioned, as well as, and they are mentioned as dry fruits. He also picks up betel leaf, tambol, which he especially mentions as a leaf which is eaten like a fruit, a meva, and there is nothing elsewhere in the world like it. He informs the ordinary people, Ahl-e-Shikam, have no taste, zauq for it. Only the high, the mehtar, and their sons relish it. Its special preparation is not for everyone except for the Qutb Falak, the king. Amir Khusro's idea of India and its geographical boundaries comes out more clearly when he mentions the different languages which the people of his country speak. And I quote him, there are different languages in every area, arsa, and corner, nahiyat of this land, having their own special phraseology and rules which are not transient. He mentions Sindhi, Lahori, that is Punjabi, Kashmiri, Kubri, Dhur Samandri, that is Kannada, Telangi, that is Telugu, Gujar, that is Gujarati, Mahabari, that is Tamil, Gauri, Bengali, Awadhi, Delhi, and all around within the boundaries of this land, there are languages, and all are Hindivi languages since olden times, and all of them are spoken by the people for all purposes. It is interesting to note that Marathi and Malayalam are not mentioned by Amir Khusro at all. Probably these languages had not developed by this time. Dealing with the commonly spoken languages during this period, Hindavi and Persian, Khusro points out, surely the popularity of Turkish grew similarly. It spread with the Turkish rule on the earth, as it was the language of the prominent people, Khasa. The commoners also adopted it, and it became popular in the world. Hind similarly got its spoken languages. Hindavi is and has been the spoken language of India. The Ghurids and the Turk came. Persian was spoken by them. The people, when they came into contact with them, slowly and gradually acquired the knowledge of Persian. The other languages which were there were constrained to be confined in their own areas. Khusro also mentions the linguistic versatility of Indians. He says that whereas an Indian can fluently converse in any of the foreign languages, the people outside India, Aksai Digar, are unable to speak in Indian dialects, Sukhane Hindi. He further explains the people of Khita, Mongols, Turks, and Arabs, in speaking Indian dialects, get sewed lips, but we can speak any language of the world as expertly as a shepherd tends his sheep. Khusro's nationalism was not just theoretical. He claims to have mastered the Indian languages himself. And I quote him, "In most of these people's languages, I have gained knowledge. I know them, inquired about them, and speak them. And to an extent, more or less, have been enlightened by them." Unquote. Amir Khusro also mentions Sanskrit and its rich literature, but remarks that it was the language of the Brahmins. Even amongst them, not all can claim mastery over this language. Like the Arabic, Sanskrit has its grammar, definitions, system, techniques, rules, and literature. He further says, this language, that is Sanskrit, has the quality of a pearl amongst the pearls. It is inferior to Arabic, but superior to Dari, that is Persian. Khusro with great pride mentions that scholars from all over the world come to India to gain knowledge and expertise. However, a Brahman never leaves the boundary of India to acquire knowledge, as there is no need for it. Brahmins in their knowledge and intellect, and I am quoting him, are far superior to the knowledge of all the books of Aristotle. Whatever Rumi revealed in philosophical thought to the world, the Brahmins have a greater wealth. This is what Amir Khusro says. However, these Brahmins are by nature quiet and do not speak much. Thus, most of their knowledge remains hidden from the world and generally remain misunderstood. Khusro, however, counts himself amongst those who acknowledge their virtues and qualities. He says, and I again quote him, as nobody has tried to learn from the Brahmins, they have remained unrevealed. But I, to an extent, have done a bit of research in this matter, and after putting a stamp of confidence on their heart, have gained some insight into their secrets of learning. Whatever I could grasp has not been contradicted from any quarter so far. Unquote. Dealing with the superior knowledge and learning of the Indians, Khusro again remarks, I quote, I may be slightly biased in my views, yet whatever I will submit, I shall justify. Though there are men of letters, nowhere is wisdom, danish, and philosophy, hikmat, so well written. Unquote. Logic, that is mantak, astrology, tanjeem, and scholastic theology, kalam, except fiqh, that is Islamic law, are found and known in India. All rational sciences, the natural sciences, tabi'i, and mathematics, Rezavi, originated in India. Regarding the Indian origin of Hindisa, arithmetic, Khusro says, and I quote him, even if wisdom, aql, makes a detour of the world, it will not find such a gift of hikmat, that is arithmetic. Take a zero, for instance, which is a blank mark in itself. When used along with something else, becomes meaningful. When the science of mathematics, Rezavi, developed from it, the book of Al-Majast, that is of Ptolemy, and Euclides, came into existence. When the science of numerals, with its addition and subtraction, is not based on this system, it becomes zero. The scholars have not been able to add to the science of Hindisa, and it has remained unchanged since its origin. The inventor of it was one ASHA, a Brahman, and in this there is no doubt. From him this science got its name Hind ASHA or Hindisa, which was shortened by the intelligent to Hindisa. Creator of this science was a Brahman, and however strange it may appear, the Greek knowledge came to depend on it. Unquote. Apart from the invention of the numerals, especially zero, Amir Khusro also mentions the invention of chess, shatranj, by the Indians, which according to him was a unique contribution of Hind to the world. A similar contribution of India to world culture was the writing of Kalilavadimna or the Panchtantra, which had an excellent flight of imagination. Another singular contribution of Indians, which Khusro mentions, is the Indian music and its hypnotizing effect even on the animals. In fact, he himself is credited to have been the creator of an instrument known as setar, which today we call as sitar. Apart from all this, Khosro's patriotism makes him sing paeans of Indian beauty, Indian clothes, and even its animals. He singles out the Indian parrot, magpie, the crow, the skylark, the woodpecker, and the crane, bagula, the peacock, monkeys, and the elephant, which were unique in the world due to their intelligence. Khusro appears to be so full of such patriotic feelings that at one place he prays, and I am quoting him, his exact words, "Give me wine, but not of any other country. Give me wine of this country, the juice of sugarcane." India, thus, in the eyes of Amir Khusro, was not only his one, but a geographic, cultural, and multi-religious entity. In one of his works, Khusro mentions a Hindu who worships fire. When asked why he does that, the Hindu replied that the burning fire lights a divine yearning in him and a desire to annihilate fana in order to gain eternal life, baka. Khusro lauds this feeling. Although a first generation migrant to India, Khusro appears to have fully imbibed the idea of India as a nation distinct in many ways from other countries. And I quote again, "How exhilarating is the climate of this country, where so many birds sing melodiously. Poets, composers, and singers rise from this land as abundantly and as naturally as the grass. How great is this land which produces men who deserve to be called men. Intelligence is the natural gift of this land. Even the illiterate are as good as the scholars. There cannot be a better teacher than the way of life of the people. It is this which enlightens the masses. It is a gift of Almighty. This is very rare in other countries. It is the effect of cultural environment of this land. If perchance any Khurasani, Rumi, or Arab comes by, he will not have to ask for anything because they will treat him as their own. They will play an excellent host and win his heart. Even if they indulge in humor with him, they also know a smile like a flower." Unquote. One cannot help but agree with Amir Khusro when he proclaims, and I quote, "No wizard in the art of poetry like Khusro exists under the sun, because Khusro belongs to India and he is the admirer of Qutb Alam. Even if Jupiter, who is the wisest of the celestial being, comes from the sky, he would also not raise any doubts to this statement and will acknowledge the truth." Thank you very much for having listened to me about what both these early authors wrote about India, Al-Beruni and Amir Khusro.
Thank you so much, sir, for enlightening us with that detailed talk. Both the historians that we are talking about, Al-Beruni and Amir Khusro, they have been there are major sections in school textbooks which talk about these historians, and that's what makes them so relevant. And I welcome questions from the audience. There must be some questions, some clarifications that people would need. There is one from Ms. Zainab Naqvi. She says, "Sir, how we look at the question of source criticism with respect to the two sources, especially with Amir Khusro's, are there instances of exaggeration, misinformation, and interpolations which are to be taken with a pinch of salt?
Well,
This is what the
naturally, the first author which I discussed was a scientist, very thorough. And whatever his views about India are, they are very dispassionate and very scientific. As far as Amir Khusro is concerned, there is no doubt. I mean, I read out passages which demonstrate that there are extreme exaggerations. Naturally, Amir Khusro is basically a poet, a literature, who tend to exaggerate a lot. So exaggerations are there. For example, at one place, I didn't cite it here, one of the fazilat of Hindustan, which he writes, is that when Adam descended from heaven, he ate the fruit of India and then went to the Arab land where the refuse was let out from his body. I mean, such type of exaggerations. कि भाई अरब क्या बात करते हैं अपनी सुपीरियरिटी की, अरब तो वो जगह है कि जहाँ पे आदम के रिफ्यूज पड़ा हुआ है, और हिंदुस्तान वो मुल्क है कि जहाँ पे आदम को सस्टेन किया गया था. So naturally these are all exaggerations. The issue is not these exaggerations in the sense that look at the intention, look at what he's trying to communicate, what is he trying to say. What he's trying to say is that in spite of the fact that his family migrated from outside the Indian boundaries, but he himself takes pride to be an Indian. And as a typical Indian, wants to praise. I mean, अब आप मैं बिल्कुल उसी अंदाज में मैं आपसे कहूँगा कि try to look at the praise of India जो आजकल की जा रही है and what Amir Khusro is doing. So both the praises do not rest on historical facts, but they show the intention of the people who are the audience of Amir Khusro. So yes, everything which he says has to be taken with a pinch of salt. There are exaggerations, but the thing which I would take as a historian is that by 13th century, these emigres, especially people like Amir Khusro, they do not consider themselves to be foreigners. So is the case with the Delhi Sultanate. That is what he is trying to tell us through his work like Nuh Sipihr.
Thank you so much, sir, for that clarification. I hope there would be some other questions. There's a question about the place Patiali, and if you can elaborate upon the location that you mentioned in your talk.
Patiali still exists. It's in the Punjab region. It's in the Indian side of Punjab, and it's still a very well-known place. And Amir Khusro's family, in fact, settled out there, and he was born at that place. You can say that Munda apna Punjabi tha. So Patiali is a place in Punjab.
Thank you so much, sir. So there's another question from Khondedar Ghulam Murtaza. He asks, sir, is there any mention in Amir Khusro's marching to Bengal Sarkar?
Well, Amir Khusro himself never marched to Bengal, but he does mention the campaigns by the various sultans, and the campaign towards Bengal is mentioned by him in one of his Bastavis. But Amir Khusro probably himself never went towards that. If Professor Jabir Raza or anyone else who has actually done research on Amir Khusro may point out that I am wrong, but as far as my knowledge is concerned, Amir Khusro never went there.
Thank you so much, sir. There's another question from the question is, I would like to ask Professor Rezavi at what point the inscription of the self and inscription of the other took place, the point of rupture, keeping in mind Cynthia Tablot's essay, unlike the times of first generation empires in the 13th century.
Well, it's a difficult question and a very important one. Um, as far as the earlier Sultanate period is concerned, uh, the first generation emigres always tried to, pose themselves, if you believe this particular writing of Amir Khusro, not to differentiate. The problem is that it was a period when the concept of nation was not there. So there was neither anyone who was a foreigner nor anyone who was indigenous. And everyone particularly was an emigre from one place or the other till I think the present days. When we use the term Vatan, it actually means a particular small region, a district from where we belong to. So possibly during this period, Cynthia Talbot might have something to say on that. But as far as the people of that period are concerned, the emigres never thought themselves to be much different from the other. Similarly, the Indians also did not take them to be foreigners. As I pointed out that in one of the previous lectures, what Richard Eaton points out, that even the invaders to India, they were never called as the other, the Muslims. They were known as Turushkas by their, clan name. So possibly, I don't think that in this period we can differentiate between, or we can talk about two different registers of clans and people.
More of a modern reading into the
Yes,
past
it's
that we are
more of
talking.
a modern reading.
Yes. Yes, sir. So, sir, Dr. Rohma Javed Rashid asks you, how much do you think Al-Beruni's opinions on Hinduism were impacted by the larger atmosphere of accommodation of other religious thoughts prevalent in the larger Islamic world? I say this because Al-Beruni was neither the first nor the last in giving these accommodative views of other religions.
I would agree with Roma that um, Amir Khusro is not singular in accommodating the beliefs of various communities. This was a tradition which he was following, which had been earlier established. But then, as I pointed out, when we compare Al-Beruni of 10th century with Amir Khusro of 13th century, 14th century, we do tend to find a difference. Al-Beruni was dispassionate, but almost considered himself to be a foreigner. Um, he gave very dispassionate opinions about Hinduism, never criticized it. He always praised the things which he found good. But if you look at 13th century Amir Khusro, he tends to be brushing aside all the differences and accepting everything as his own. So the traditions were there, but Amir Khusro probably by 13th century had a different take.
Thank you so much, sir. There's another question by Dr. Salim Zaveed. He says, sir, I would like to ask you what we can learn from Amir Khusro's patriotism and his idea of India. So, probably he wants you to elaborate more on what you touched upon towards the end of your talk.
Well, what I talked about Amir Khusro is just to contrast with the present situation. Today we are living in an age when we try to highlight the differences more than the commonalities. Here, during the 13th century, a person who actually should have taken pride in the fact that he is a Turk, he is trying to posture that the Indian society, the place where he has come to settle, is much better than the place of his origin. Uh, uh, a reading of Amir Khusro's work, not only Nuh Sipihr, but even his other Masnavis, would point out towards attempts towards accommodation. And one of the takes which we should take is that in spite of all the differences, living together differently should be our motto. And we should learn from Amir Khusro and try to appreciate even the bad things in a positive way.
That's such a important message to, like make it go through right now at this particular moment. Kamlesh Mohan asks you, this is a detailed question. I'm going to read the entire thing. Where have the glories gone? Many factors, especially colonial politics, may be held responsible for weakening the heritage. Is not the elite self-interest responsible for defacement and forgetfulness? Real cultural heritage Real cultural heritage. How far weak linkages between past and present and disruption of dialogue led to minimization of appreciation of composite culture in India?
Well, there are a large number of factors which are responsible. What we generally tend to do is that we try to put all the blame on our colonial masters. Whenever we talk about the communal conflagrations or differences, we always say कि वो तो अंग्रेज लड़ा गए हमें. So I think there is a limit to this argument, and somewhere inside, all of us are also responsible. And the real causes of the responsibility are very varied. And I think that we should self-introspect and see where we changed our direction. And instead of taking pride in a common heritage, we started, being what we are today. One of the reasons I think is that as far as we Indians are concerned, in fact, when I use the term Indian, I mean people of the whole subcontinent, whether they are from Bangladesh or from India or from Pakistan. Somehow we do not take our heritage very seriously. Neither we take history. I mean, you ask anyone, they would say, "Kare kya gade murde ukhad rahe ho? History bhi koi cheez hai." The Europeans, their children understand their heritage much better than what our elders have made us understand our heritage. I think one of the reasons for where we have reached is this fact that somehow we lack this sense of a common past, because that was never really developed amongst us. And one of the factors for it is also the fact that somehow we started inhabiting different worlds altogether with minimum contacts with the other communities. It's a very complex question, and I feel that मैं सिर्फ इतना कहूँगा कमलेश मोहन जी से कि रीजंस बहुत हैं, उसमें से हमको खुद अपने सीने में झांक के देखना चाहिए, और कहीं ना कहीं अंग्रेजों से, कॉलोनियल मास्टर से ज्यादा रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी हमारी अपनी है हमने एंशियंट अपने धरोहर को अपना नहीं समझा, उसको बहुत डिस्पैशनेटली एक दूर से देखने की कोशिश की, और वो उसको ऐसा समझा जैसे वो कोई और चीज है, हम नहीं है। और उसकी वजह से, क्योंकि हम उससे कभी अट्रैक्ट नहीं हो पाए, उस पास्ट को समझने की कोशिश नहीं की, हम आज क्या हैं उस क्वेश्चन को कभी ग्रैपल करने की नहीं कोशिश की, देयर लाइज द रियल रीजन व्हाई समहाउ we lost our this common heritage, which this 1000 or more than 1000 years should have given us.
Thank you so much, sir, for all the answers. Shagufta, ma'am is here. I'll hand over the stage to her.
Oh, it is. Thank you so much, sir. I really want to thank you and thank you, viewers, for being here, participating, asking questions. Keep the questions going. We still have sir with us. But before that, I just wanted to thank sir for actually selecting these two sources that present India from completely two different perspectives, from, of course, closer in time, but different times lines. So, as a part of our discussions, we focused on two books, which are both extremely perceptive, I feel, in their own ways, and they kind of pioneer as sources of history. So, again, sir, thank you so much for presenting this. And what I figured out was that there's a fundamental difference between Kitab-ul-Hind, which is an outsider's perspective on India, and an interesting cross cultural study, which sort of looks at, of course, geography, polity, everything, and of course, philosophy, which even Al-Beruni comes to wholeheartedly admire. In contrast, the Nuh Sipihr is homegrown. It is a pioneering sort of 13th century work, which was written by, of course, our very own Diliwala. I mean, we claim him, although you mentioned earlier that he's from Patiali, near Eta. So it is written by the prolific Amir Khusro. It is the third chapter of this work in
I'm
this.
sorry. Yes. I'm sorry. I made the mistake of calling it Punjab. Yeah.
No, so you mentioned that earlier in your talk that he's
Mhm.
from your Eta. In
Ah,
fact, I remember that. So it is in the third chapter of Nuh Sipihr. Now I remember from the NCERT book that he mentions a very beautiful eulogy of India, where he says, "If my adversary taunts me as to why I prefer Tarji Hind over other lands, I would say there are two reasons for this assertion." And he says that I will uses the word hujjat. The first reason is that this land, since time immemorial, has been destined to be the place of my birth, abode, and the motherland. He says, "This is my Vatan, this is my Mawa, this is Maulud." And he says that India, therefore, in the eyes of Amir Khusro, was not only his Vatan, but a geographic, cultural, multi religious entity. And in another work of Amir Khusro's, I remember, also mentioned in another book that I read, mentions Hindu who worships fire. So Amir Khusro goes and asks him, "Why do you worship the fire?" So he replied that the burning fire lights a divine yearning in him and a desire to attain annihilation or fana in order to gain the eternal life. That for us at ASHA and Ganga Jamuni is Khusro's India, and that is pretty much what we all believe in. We will take up some questions which have come up. Um, Sadaf says, very true, sir. We lacked a sense of understanding of our past. Thank you so much for the interesting talk. Lots of people are congratulating and thanking Professor Rezavi, and I completely second them. Although there was a question of um, another text, Khulasate Tawarikh. I think maybe we can forward this request to some scholars who can take this up on this series. Now, I want to inform you all that this series has been conceived of by Professor Rezavi, who's here with us. So, in case you have any requests, we have a whole lineup which is, full of like really formidable names. So, if you have any requests regarding any of the, topics or any sources that you particularly would like to hear, please let us know. Keep writing to us and keep informing us. And I want to thank Lubna Irfan here, who's very I have to say courageously, pretty much last minute, accepted our invitation. Thank you so much, Lubna, and a very happy birthday to you. So
Oh, thank you so much.
yeah, we found out through our secret sources it's your birthday. So Lubna Irfan is an assistant professor of history at Women's College at AMU, and Lubna Irfan will also be a part of our presentation team, and she will be talking about another source, Zakiratul Khwanin, which is a taskira, which provides the biographical accounts of Mughal nobles and officials for the period of Akbar, Jahangir, and Shah Jahan. So this text was written by Sheikh Farid Bukhari in the time of Shah Jahan, but we look forward to hearing you on that. So no more
Uh,
questions there. So
look,
please, yes,
Shagufta, may I say something? Uh, you know, uh, as Shagufta was telling you about this series, uh, uh, we have a number of scholars. In fact, our dates are booked till at least March or April. Till at least March, our dates are full, and still there are certain scholars who have to be adjusted. So there would be many discussions on sources. At the moment, we have started only with the Persian sources. We would also be taking up certain European accounts later on. We would also be taking up the regional, for example, Rajasthani, Gujarati, Marathi sources, the Hindivi sources. People like Francesca Orsini has agreed to be part of us. Uh, uh, in case if you think there are certain sources which should be discussed, please, as Shagufta said, please do write to us. We at the moment have tried to choose those sources which try to either uh, give us crucially important information about our past, or they tell us about how we survived for these thousands of years, uh, living together but separately. So both these things we have taken into consideration. तो वो सोर्सेज जहां हम हिंदुस्तानियों के बारे में बताया गया है कि हमारा समाज कैसे डेवलप हुआ, या वो सोर्सेज जो हमारे पास की अंडरस्टैंडिंग के लिए क्रूशली इंपॉर्टेंट है, दोज आर दी सोर्सेज एट द मोमेंट वी हैव चोजन. लेकिन अगर कोई और भी चीजें हैं which should be discussed, we are open, and we
There are
will.
already, sir, requests
Yeah.
coming from people regarding different talks that they would want to listen
Yes, I can see Nanak Ganguly asking for Professor Richard Eaton.
Eaton, Professor Eaton.
We have already requested Professor Eaton. In fact, we will take Bengal as well. Although there is another topic which we have decided to give him, so possibly there might be 3 lectures from him if he also accepts to speak on Bengal. Well and good.
Professor Eaton really enjoyed our audience, and I want to thank you guys again because you were a fantastic audience. You asked him, and he was really happy to see that so many Indian people were engaged and wanted to know more. So,
Yes,
of course,
Odia sources would also be taken up. Odia sources, we are going to
Oriya
take Odia
sources.
sources. Yes. That is in our plan. We have, in fact, we are in talks with a scholar who has worked on Odisha from Delhi University. The only problem is the dates. We can't have more than 2 lectures per week because भाई हम लोगों को कुछ और भी काम करने हैं, यूनिवर्सिटी भी देखनी है, तो क्लासेस भी लेनी है, तो बहरहाल. So we will extend the time, but I am in talks and we will take all those things. So Ganguly, we will take Odia sources.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Rezavi. Again, thank you so very much for, first of all, conceptualizing, conceiving, and curating this entire series, which I believe, as Nanak said, Nanak Ganguly has said, are God sent. Really, they are very important for these times, these very polarizing times. So let's just hope that this continues and we continue to have this response from all of you. And we're very grateful to have you. And thank you, Lubna Irfan, for pitching in last minute. As I said, thank you so very much, and hope to see you more often on Ganga
Yes,
Jamuni
I
ASHA
would
platform.
love to be here. It's such an amazing.
one message for Diwali for tomorrow: be Indian first. जो अमीर खुसरो ने कहा है, आप न हिंदू हैं न मुसलमान हैं, आप हिंदुस्तानी हैं, आप हिंदुस्तानी बन के रहिए, जिसको जो सियासत करना है करने दीजिए, इल्म को जगाइए, और इल्म की रोशनी अगर आपके पास रहेगी तो इन सब खुराफात से आप बिल्कुल दूर रहेंगे। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
Thank you. I think one couldn't have summed this better. So this is a wonderful message for everyone on our end. Happy Diwali. Enjoy, illuminate your lives. आप दिए जलाएं, दिल ना जलाएं, और आप इल्म की रोशनी बढ़ाते रहें. और hope to have continued response. Thank you so very much, everybody. Khondigar Sahab, thank you so very much. Of course, we will have Professor Eaton. We'll request him for all this. And yes, thank you all. Have a great evening. Happy Diwali.